welcome to the Economic Development is Not for Amateurs book tour with co-author Ross Patten, who happens to be the Economic Development Project Manager in Covington, Kentucky. We're just talking about Kentucky and how we're all having a similar hot fall so far. So Ross, I'm going to hand it off to you. Feel free to share your screen. Let me know if you have any problem with that.
Great. You all should be able to see my screen and hopefully hear me. Great. Okay, well, if we are good to go, I basically just first want to thank the Lawrence County Regional Chamber. You all have been huge supporters of us and have been kind of huge cheerleaders of this. And I just want to put a special thank you to Melanie and Lindsay for kind of helping to organize this and put this on. I know we got a smaller group right now, but this will be recorded and put out for later. So hopefully you all find this to be useful. I also know that there's going to be a wide variety of stakeholders on this group. So some of you may be private sector businesses that are invested in the region's health. Others of you may be a nonprofit or institutions or even government. And it's all designed that hopefully you find little tidbits that, you find useful so that you can make the changes on the areas that you can control and hopefully advocate for the changes in the things that you don't necessarily control or the things that you interact with. But altogether, it's crucial to understand that all these different aspects, you all are a part of moving that needle forward. And one particular government can't do it alone, just like the private sector really can't do it alone. You all have to kind of combine to move it forward, I guess. We will do this in about 30 minutes. Our book is designed into quick summaries of the chapters, and we'll leave about 15 minutes for questions at the very end. I'm a local economic developer. That is my bread and butter. So I am responsible for bringing in businesses, helping businesses expand. I do projects kind of on the day-to-day. That is my value add for Covington. My co-author is a site selector, and he's also a consultant. So his job is to work with companies when they are making site selection decisions to figure out where in the country they should move based off of a bunch of different factors. He also works with communities like you all to basically look at the strengths and weaknesses of your community, try to figure out what's going right and what you can improve on so that when you are trying to attract new investment, new companies to the county, you all are putting your best foot forward. So he provides that aspect as well. We have designed this to kind of be very short, concise, to be very memorable in all these different chapters, so that whether you are serving as an economic development, on a board, or whether you're just a community cheerleader, or you are in a government position, you can kind of keep these very memorable lessons in mind and kind of know the critical steps, so to speak, to get the basics of economic development. This is not rocket science at all, right? But it is nuanced, and you need to be kind of doing all of these different facets simultaneously to really get the most bang for your buck. I start off this with the most important lesson, and I'm going to spend a little bit longer on it just because it is that important. And it may seem very obvious that effective leadership equals community prosperity, but over and over and over again, the communities that I work in that have strong leaders are killing it, right? Like, they are the ones that are bringing in investment. They provide the certainty to market. Businesses know what to expect. They know how quickly it can be to get up to speed and get their market out the door. The communities that are not doing well, where there's divisiveness, where there's uncertainty, those are the ones that are just, moving investment out of their place. And it has been, constant. And you see it all over the country. You see the communities that are doing it well, and that is why they're doing it well, is because they have leadership in a variety of different industries. That can be elected leaders, but it can also be education, institutions, private sector. And the best communities have the combination, so that when a new election is happening every 2 or 3 years, and new leaders are elected, or new leaders come into different institutions, you're not constantly doing a zigzag or going back and forth. There is a long-term strategy. There is a eye on the prize, and it's keeping everyone together to keep going down that path. The second part about it is leadership. Strong leaders, the communities that are doing it well, have to constantly convince their voters and the constituency of why economic development matters, why these investments matter. These things often take a little bit of time to materialize into results. Investing in things like workforce may not seem that sexy, but ensuring that we have the talent base to fill future jobs now, as well as jobs in the future, is critical for the health of your region and the long-term survival of y'all. It also takes constant investment. It is hard in an area. I will say, I work in government. A lot of governments are pretty strapped on cash. Oftentimes there's a lot of different competing realities, and creating and choosing to invest in economic development means that money isn't going to another thing. And that is sometimes hard to kind of keep that investment going. But economic development needs those types of long-term investments. These things don't materialize over the short term, they materialize over the long term. Leaders are also, I talked about it just a second ago, they have to create the certainty and speed to market in a community. And they have to constantly be reassessing that. So you can't get your sights off of that, because existing businesses need to know exactly what it is, how long a permit's going to take for them to be able to expand on their site. New businesses want to know exactly what the process is to open, how long that's going to take. They need to know what type of spaces are available, and is this an area that we want to be investing in for the long term. Strong leaders need to be constantly doing that assessment, and that is truly crucial. The other thing is, we live in a country right now that is extremely divided. I don't think there's any argument against that. But on a regional and on a local level, of course, there's divisive. We all have differences of opinions, but the strong communities that have really strong leadership, they know the areas that they can't agree on. But they do all generally agree, and I think we all generally agree, that we want strong neighborhoods. We want jobs and opportunities. We want wealth building in our neighborhoods. We want safe neighborhoods. Those are generally things that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum or whatever, we all want those strong communities where we can live, thrive, and play, and those types of things. So economic development should be that kind of middle ground, that combining force to get good deals moving forward. Finally, I'm spending a lot of time on leadership, but it really does matter this much. And again, leadership can be private businesses as well as elected, or as well as education leaders in all sorts of institutions. You all are the best cheerleaders of that region. You all are the best ways of bringing in leads. I was one time trying to convince a developer to make an investment in my community, and it was a multi-million-dollar deal. And my previous mayor that I had been working with was there, and she was apologizing for the state of our community. And this was a developer that was already interested in the community, that was looking at the site, was doing due diligence and all sorts of things. And she kept apologizing and not offering any solutions for why, apologizing for the state of the community. I don't even know how to really describe it. We managed to win that deal. But the important part about it is that you can know your own community's weaknesses, and that's fine. Oftentimes the other party, they already know it, right? They already know, they've looked at the data and they already know what you're weak on. They want you to tell them, because that's fine, but they also want to know what you're doing about it, right? So don't be afraid of weaknesses. Just know and explain what you are making improvements, how much you've made improvements over the time, and where you are going. That is the type of thing. But in every type of meeting that you go to, whether it's a business meeting, whether it's just an event, you talk up your community, because you would be surprised at how many leads come in just because you all said, like, hey, you'd actually be a great fit in our community. The talent base is there. those type of things. And those types of connections really create that funnel of strong leads and keep that way of getting projects and wins continually moving on and going and going. So I'm done beating this one. We're going to move on. But effectively, I just want to continue is that is why the communities that are very successful in economic development, that are killing the game, it's because they have strong leadership on all of these other lessons. Now, this one's called No Product, No Project. And I think it's pretty easy to understand that if you don't have something to sell, you can have all the leads in the world, but if you don't have the buildings or the land for them to go into, you're not going to win the deal. And I recently had a community that they were very excited about, I was just offering my opinion for them, and they brought me in because I work with a lot of developers, and they had this piece of land that they thought was a development site, and they were trying to attract users to it. And I looked at it and it had all these topography issues. It had no utilities going to the site. It didn't even have great access. It didn't have a road. And I looked at it and I was like, you guys don't have a development site. You just have land, right? And no matter what you do at this moment, you've got to invest over time to create this into an actually being a shovel-ready site that someone is going to be ready to go to. Again, it goes back to certainty and speed to market. Most businesses start their site selection decision by looking at buildings. And the reason that is because they can move into it quickly and they can get up and running and get their product out the door. If buildings don't exist, then they will go to land and other types of things. But making sure that you have product that is ready to go at all different points and constantly making sure that product is coming online is really important. The other thing about it is product doesn't necessarily just mean buildings. I mean, it can be. So it can be creating spec industrial buildings because you have very low vacancy. Maybe you have a very low vacancy in office and you need to be investing in creating and renovating, move-in ready office space. That can be product. That is investments to create that site ready, shovel ready sites that now users can basically go into. But it can also be infrastructure, right? It can be the utilities going into a site. It could be the water. It can be making sure that a site has broadband and gas and water, sewer to it. It can be as well as the, roads. That's an easy one. What is the state of your roads? If they have a ton of potholes, it doesn't show very well. But it can also be non-infrastructure or non-very physical infrastructure related stuff. It can be those quality of life type things. It can be the parks. It can be libraries, walking paths. Those are the types of product that is necessary. And developers on their own aren't going to develop that unless generally they have a carrot. Otherwise, the private market would have figured that out a long time ago. If there are gaps in your community, then you all need to be figuring out what they are and in making those investments. And that's where strong leadership comes in. It takes money and at times takes convincing people of why those investments are necessary. But if you don't have product, you can't land the user. The third is that the market regionally, sell locally. Hopefully you all have heard of Pure Michigan. I think this is a good example of it. Pure Michigan has a ton of ads. I don't know if they just are focused on Ohio or whatever. Hopefully you all get it too. But basically they have a marketing campaign for the entire state where they're marketing Michigan. Businesses, as well as tourists, as well as other residents, right? They're trying to bring tourists and investment to the state. But what they do in each one of their different campaigns, the different advertisements, is they also focus on an individual small part of that state and how it ties into the larger Pure Michigan campaign. So it's all designed about, starting as this larger region, or in this case, state, and then pinpointing it down to a specific region. That's a really good way to look at it, is that when companies are making their first decision, they're first looking at the labor draw. They're first looking at regions. They're looking at what region is it best for them to be in. They're not looking at Covington, Kentucky, where I work. They're looking at Cincinnati and they're comparing that to Pittsburgh and they're comparing that to Indianapolis. Okay, so wherever you sit in the field of economic development, whether you're on a very micro level or you're on a regional, you should understand the power and the importance of a regional economic development organization to bring in leads. They're the ones that are selling the region. They're also the ones that have the money that are creating that brand and that identity for the region. Once companies narrow their site search down, that's where they're actually looking at the individual space. And that's where it's important, is that the transaction is always local. So of course, Covington, Kentucky wants to compete once a entity has decided on the Cincinnati MSA, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky MSA. We are now competing against other neighborhoods of why that company should choose us versus someone else. And that is to, the importance of it is that you as a local entity should always be tied into the larger brand, because you're trying to make this kind of seamless, just like Pure Michigan is making this seamless connection between a very small part of the state with this larger brand. You should be doing the exact same thing, because they are marketing you and your advantages just as much as you are trying to land the user. Finally, a lot of people don't necessarily think about tourism as economic development, but tourism totally is economic development. It's becoming more important, more and more important each time. So generally, more and more, I guess what I'm trying to say is more and more places are making a lasting impression on people when they're going there. That is where companies that, I'll use Asheville. Asheville, North Carolina gets a lot of people and tourists, and they've marketed themselves very well towards that. Well, because of that, companies have paid attention because they will know that is where people want to be. They like that place for various different reasons. People want to move there, their talent and workforce want to be there. So they're looking at spaces like that because they have focused on, they started with tourism and creating that brand. But as well as because of that brand, they have created a sense of leads going into that community. So altogether, make sure that you are, no matter where you are, you understand the importance of marketing the region regionally. But at the very end of the day, the transaction is always local, and you want to land them in their community. But the region is totally important. Workforce. This is a huge topic today, and it has been a huge topic for a while, many years now, is that companies are constantly looking for talent, right? Talent is driving everything for companies. They want to know where they're going to be filling jobs. They want to know where their talent's coming from. So again, going back to the region, when they're making a site selection decision, they're looking at a region, and they're looking at, in that region, in a 45-minute kind of driving distance, how far can their talent drive to get to their location if they chose that? And they want to know, what type of education's there. They want to know what skills are there, but they want to ensure that the jobs that they have now, as well as jobs coming in the future, that talent base is in the community. So on a regional level and on a micro level, you all need to be paying attention to what are the gaps in your skills and job opportunities so that you're constantly assessing that and ensuring that you are filling that. One really great way to be doing that is doing a business retention program, right? That we ensure that no matter the county may be doing this, or as well as individual municipalities, but someone should be going out and meeting with all the businesses and stakeholders in their community to understand what are the bottlenecks of talent, where, what skills can't you find, what jobs are you trying to get into the future? And that feedback loop should be going back to the workforce board that is basically working with the education and the private sector and the education that is all creating the coursework and the strategy and implementing the strategy to create long-term and short-term wins to fill those gaps in those skill levels. So while on a local level, you might not think that you can make a ton of improvements onto a workforce initiative, you are truly crucial. Just as in an entire region, you are crucial providing that feedback loop and ensuring that the workforce board knows about the challenges that are being faced by private businesses. Two really good examples that we use in this chapter, and we're always trying to provide good examples for people to follow leads on. Evansville, Indiana has a solid tech apprenticeship program. That's, in my view, we push people to go to colleges, university, and it straddles people with a ton of debt. And oftentimes there's not even, jobs. We have a huge demand all over this country in trades in a variety of fields that are really good paying. You can come out of a technical school with not that much debt, if any, and sometimes with an apprenticeship, you get a certificate and you were paid along the way and skilled up. These are really solid ways to fill these skill gaps that we have in our community. Another one that we use is Ingram State is in Arkansas. And I just want to make sure I get that right. Ingram State. Can't remember. I think it's Arkansas, but it's a technical college that exclusively serves incarcerated students. That is a huge population of our community that oftentimes isn't thought about, but we have vested interest in ensuring that once they exit, they have the skills to fill jobs, especially those jobs that are in need. So constantly be thinking about your workforce and ensuring that we are filling the needs of your current needs as well as the long-term needs of your private sector businesses. Grow your garden. I call Grow Your Garden, and I'll use an example. Back in 2011, Covington, and I'll use Covington as an example, we lost two of our largest employers during the Great Recession. One moved across the river to Ohio, so a very 5-minute move, but all those jobs left our city, and another moved to another state. But the importance about this is that it was complemented, it was exasperated maybe by the Great Recession. And we lost two of our big industries that we relied on for all of our operating expenses. And because of the fiscal challenges of losing two in the course of a year, we were about 2 weeks away from not meeting payroll in 2011. That's crazy, but it's a really good lesson for this chapter. Also, 2 years ago, everyone was going crazy about Amazon headquarters number 2. Communities from all over were just throwing incentives, trying to attract this huge user, this huge big fish to their community. And understandably, there's a lot of jobs and investment that came along with it. Personally, I would rather attract 100 companies that are smaller, that are in a variety of different fields. But what you saw is that people were going crazy to try to attract that user to their community while kind of not focusing on their existing businesses, which oftentimes quickly attracts the ear of and anger of their existing businesses. So the two main lessons of this chapter is that economic development is as much about playing offense as playing defense, right? You constantly need to be looking at of your entire local and regional ecosystem, understanding what sectors are big, what sectors are smaller. You constantly need to diversify yourself as a reason, similar to like a retirement account, right? You don't want to just invest in one company's stock. You want to invest in index funds where you own a small piece of a bunch of different companies. A community needs to be doing that as well, because if a sector or an industry has challenges, you're not going and you're entirely dependent on that industry, you're less likely to have all the terrible effects of that industry closing, which might impact home ownership and foreclosures and all sorts of different things. If you're diversified, then you are a little more resilient to the inevitable recessions that we are always going to happen. COVID-19 was a great example of this. It primarily affected the service sector tremendously. It affected other sectors as well, but it really, had a huge impact on the service industry, but sometimes they're wider ones. So you constantly need to be growing and trying to attract businesses into various different types of industries to make yourself resilient so that when the inevitable bad times come, you are able to deal with that. The important part about this is really ensuring that you have a business retention program. You should be going out. And if you're private business and you have not had someone from an economic development agency of whatever come out and talk to you about what challenges you are facing, what is going well, what's not going well, you need to reach out, because they need to know that so that they can make policy changes to help you at the end of the day grow and be in the best position to add jobs, to add locations, those types of things. So grow your garden. Last, the close to the very end, time kills deals. This probably seems very obvious to most people on this call. Government is often the great bottleneck of investment. I was doing a deal one time. It was one of my first deals, and this company was super excited about coming to this urban location. I'm generally an urban guy, so this company was making a huge couple $1 million investment in this urban location, but it was a manufacturing zone building, and they had a sort of manufacturing tilt, but there was mostly office tech jobs where they were making an end product that went on their wrist. And because of it, it didn't fit easily into the zoning code. It didn't fit into anything that our government systems were designed around. So when they went for a zoning permit, it was like, oh, well, you need to go to the zoning board because you've got to get this special exception. Oh, you're making improvements on the exterior building. Well, because of that, you need to go to the historic preservation board. Oh, because all that has added additional costs. Well, now you need an incentive from the local government. And now you need to go to this other economic development board. You need parking authority. It was such a freaking mess. And it showed us that we were sending this company in too many different directions. We had to show that we had customer service, that we had we had it streamlined because we were not providing the certainty and speed to market. The crucial part about this, and if you are in the private sector, you know this very well. You know what cities are easy to do business. You know which towns are not easy to do business. You know where there is a person that has an ombudsman that is designed to help you, figure out, okay, what steps is it necessary for me to grow and expand and apply for this permit? This is not my day-to-day job. So what do I need to do in order to invest in your community? You also know the communities where you're filling out a form 132B, and it was probably last updated in 1993 and surely only works from 3 to 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. That is a problem, but more often than not, that is the reality for a lot of different public sector places. So this chapter is all designed in providing very specific recommendations of how you can create a new business guide, for example, to show businesses exactly what steps they need to get open for business and how long that's going to take. 45 days, whatever, right? You now know. Time kills deals. And if you do not, and you are not constantly cutting the red tape and reassessing, you're going to lose deals. I'm going to move quickly on this one because it's kind of talked about earlier, but this effectively is, what is your city's charm factor? What is it that differentiates yourself when an investor comes to town or a tourist comes to town? What is the thing that is your brand that differentiates your town from another one that's 5 minutes away? What are your strategic advantages? Your brand should be authentic, first of all, but it should quickly talk about what is the character, what is the strategic advantages, and what differentiates you from any of the other ones in your region. So making sure that your brand is marketed, but as well as marketed in every aspect and all the day-to-day ways that go into how your city and county and region is viewed. So every event that you have is an opportunity to shine. That is bringing new investors, that is bringing new tourists, new people to your community. It should be thought about, and oftentimes many people don't think about these events as an opportunity for that community to shine. But there should be someone that is looking at what is the person's first impression. Is parking terrible to get to us to where you're trying to go for this event? Is it leading to a parking garage where you walk out, it's dimly lit, looks unsafe, and smells like urine? That is a terrible first impression. But those events that have easy access, going to a parking garage, it's clean, it is showing the community off really well. You're talking to people about all of your small wins, the larger wins, why your community is the place to be. Those are opportunities all the time that are happening in your community to not only reinforce your brand, but to convince people, homeowners, investors, businesses, of why they should choose your location. Because of that, you should have one marketing and someone focused on the day-to-day health of your district. Many communities don't have someone like this, but it really is that crucial. You need to ensure that the community looks good. As first impressions, does it look tired and disinvested? Or is there, and if it is there a program like, a facade program that's helping businesses fix up the exteriors of their buildings, or a rent subsidy that's helping fill vacancies so that during that first crucial year, you're helping to keep operational costs low. There should be themes that are created so that you are constantly marketing your brand, creating those first impressions, and showcasing your community well to whoever might be stopping by. And finally, everyone probably knows this quote, control your own destiny or someone else will, but it really, Jack Welch obviously said that, but it is so true when it comes to economic development. You have to be able to control your destiny and take charge for it. The communities that have done really well, and for example, Chattanooga 20, 30 years ago, had incredibly high vacancy rates. They had environmental challenges. They had turned their back on a lot of their biggest assets. And it took decades, and it took strong leadership and a lot of resources, but they have totally reinvented themselves and have and are now, have a really very low vacancy rate. They have a strong entrepreneurship center, and they are attracting businesses over and over because they took it on themselves to make those investments themselves into creating broadband and all these types of things and the product necessary to transform their community. No one else is going to do that. The private sector can't do it alone. The public sector can't do it alone. It really takes that collaboration. And if you don't, and this is you kind of always going back to the leadership, the communities that we've seen that have done the best are those that are, they're the ones taking risks. They're the ones that are pretending that they're acting like this is their last term in office. They're the ones that are, going out on a limb and trying to do the bold actions that will make lasting impressions. So at the end of the day, you all have it in your power to make the change. And if you don't, you will follow in the footsteps of many other communities throughout the country that are seeing disinvestment happening there. But the communities that are doing it well, not just in the short term, but their leadership is combined to do it on the long term. So that is control your own destiny or someone else will. That is my 30 minutes. Hopefully I budgeted that decently well. I will open it up to questions. If you all have questions for me, hopefully there is, because it's a small group.
Hey Ross, Sam Houston, just more of not a question, but a comment. Really enjoyed the presentation. Actually looking forward to, have not read the book yet, but I very much appreciate your time today and actually kind of walking through the book for us. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Ross. This is Tom McKinley with the New Wilmington Area Chamber of Commerce. And I have read the book, and here's a list of all the points that I've been looking at explaining to people and whatever. I have a whole bunch of highlighted items from this book. It really proved to be useful for me and the people that, I talked to that had read it, because it really got everybody on the same page.
It's great to hear. That was the design.
It was easy to read, and it gave people. And unfortunately, there's a number of things that we just as we're looking at our particular environment here with Forward Lawrence, there's a lot of opportunities we have, and some of them we're going to be able to deal with, and some of them that we aren't. But just to have a common lexicon is really handy.
Yeah, great.
I think Tom really hit the nail on the head there with this overview, and the ability to all speak the same language is a big deal with us with moving forward with Forward Lawrence and the initiative and the recommendations that are coming soon. Ross, it's been very valuable for us to have you on and to share the overview and the examples that you have. We're glad that we're recording this and able to share it then with a broader base, hopefully going out to our membership, to our stakeholders, to the community at large, so they can get a better idea of what economic development is and what really is behind it.
Yeah, and I'm very excited. I think that, obviously you guys have this strategy coming out soon. And I think that'll be a huge, you all should compliment yourself for just going about that, investing and doing a strategy and making sure that it takes a lot of time and investors and stakeholders to go about and do it. But it really does provide that action plan. And that's how I met Jay originally. I was telling Melanie before this, we hired Jay's firm because we had squirrel syndrome, and we were going and being pulled in 1,000 different directions and told you should prioritize this or this and this. And it's just not a way to be. So I'm really excited for you all. I think that'll be great.
I just want to add in, if anyone's on the call who doesn't have the book, or if we send this out and you think of anyone who doesn't have the book, we did just get a fresh new order in, and they are signed copies, so we can definitely get you one.
And the last thing I will say is that if hopefully if you found this useful, and sounds like a couple of you have in sort of way, I would really appreciate it. We would really appreciate it if you just leave us a review. That only helps us as authors to try to make sure that we're making content that is valuable to communities. That's obviously the most useful thing, but it also provides your kind of short little stamp of approval that you found value in it. So if you stop by Amazon or LinkedIn, doesn't really matter, but Amazon, and leave a review, hopefully a 5-star, I'm just saying, I would really appreciate it.
Well, are there any more questions from the group? Thank you so much, Ross, for taking the time to join us and to go over this with us. I'm excited to see if we get some more feedback from the group and the folks that get to watch the video later. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to.